Like most people I know, I've liked video games ever since I was a little kid. I can remember the first time that my family took a trip to Hawaii. Everybody was excited to go out and go snorkeling and surfing and hit the beach. They all wanted to run around in the sand. Some of them really wanted to go up into the mountains and into the volcanoes and watch the eruptions and stuff way up in the sky. All seemed kind of terrifying to me, not really that exciting. I just wanted to get right back to the hotel because right in the middle of the hotel lobby, they had. Yep, it was Mario or Super Mario. I think it was versus Super Mario back then. It was a new version that had just come out. I'd played the old school Mario in arcades at the time. The one with the where you're going up the ladder and fighting Donkey Kong and all that, and played Donkey Kong. This was just this insane new advancement. And arcades were kind of always where it was when I was a kid. All the new stuff, all the multiplayer stuff, and really all the fun, exciting stuff was just at the arcades. The games that we had at home were relatively simple, unless you maybe had a really rich friend who could play 3 or 4 year old arcade games on whatever system they had. I had one of those who had like the Jaguar and the Sega Genesis and the Dreamcast and pretty much every system. I kind of just sat around with my one. My mom kept asking me, "Why would you possibly need another game system? I already got you one. You already have games. Play those ones." So my dream as a kid, like a lot of my friends, of course, was to just have my own arcade. Like have this big giant arcade full of games where me and all my friends could play. Of course, it didn't quite work out like that. Since then, I've spent the last 30 years playing games and just kind of making my own games, working in the video game industry and stuff. And I've really kind of always had that thought just in the back of my head. Like, I'd really like to have some arcade stuff, really like to have an arcade like at my house, or just even make some arcade games. Because, like I said, I've made a lot of games, but I've never made an actual game that was in an arcade. I've made games people played on their PCs or on their consoles or VR headsets or phones or whatever. But that feeling of an arcade game just has this weird, interesting difference to it. I guess maybe it's just the buttons and the controls and the standing there and kind of that shared space while you're playing. I feel like you can do some different and maybe fun and interesting things with it. So my plan and my project was to build up my own arcade system. I wanted to take an arcade setup, put it together, see what that was like, see how hard it was to actually build an existing one, and then go through the process of modding one. So I could play whatever I wanted on it, whenever I wanted, and make it so that I could really just build my own games that I could share with other people or just have other people play and test out and just have a lot of fun with. But before we get on with the video, this video is sponsored by Core. Core is an online game creation platform powered by the Unreal Engine that lets you play, create, and share games for free. With Core, it's extremely easy to build beautiful games from scratch with their easy to use tools, and they even have a multiplayer feature built in, so you don't have to worry about setting up servers, networking, or anything like that. No coding or prior game development experience is required, but if you like, Core lets you write code in Lua, so you can add exactly the mechanics you want to your game. Core also gives you access to thousands of free high-quality music, sound, and art assets. New games are constantly added, and once you're done with your game, you can simply hit the publish button, and it'll be available instantly to play on the Core platform. They even have an industry-leading revenue share for UGC platforms of a fantastic 50%. Right now, they're hosting the Core Summer Games Jam with a $25,000 prize pool, which is a perfect way to start exploring Core. Again, Core is completely free, so I definitely recommend you go check them out by simply clicking the link in the description. So about a year ago, I decided to finally do it, to build my own arcade setup and maybe make my own games. The thing that kind of pushed me was actually just me looking at Slick Deals, which is just a website that I look at somewhat regularly with great deals. And they had this pop up, this little ad there for a new arcade system that was coming out, and it was NBA Jam's Arcade 1-Up. Now, for normal people, that probably wouldn't be nearly as exciting as it was for me. But as a kid, like I used to play this game all the time. It was an arcade game that I used to literally like sneak out of the house in the middle of the night, walk down to 7-Eleven with my buddy Tom and play like throughout the night. We would go from midnight until 2 a.m. out there playing video games and getting really, really, really good at old basketball games.
He's on fire!
It was a blast, and it was a lot of nostalgia for me, so I had to get it the second that I saw it pop up. That, and I kinda thought maybe the world was coming to an end, so I freaked out and was like, "Oh, it's either now or never, right? I gotta do it." So I ordered it up and waited because it was a pre-order and it took, I don't know, 2 or 3 months to get here. When it finally did arrive, I actually posted it to my Instagram account, which was, I think, the only time that I've really used my Instagram account. But I'm going to start posting there regularly, so make sure that you jump over and follow me if you're not already. And make sure that you've hit like and subscribe too, because it makes me happy, it makes YouTube happy, and it'll make lots of arcade games magically appear or something. I don't know. Just hit the button, please. Anyway, let's get on with when the arcade showed up. So when the actual box came, if you've never seen these things, the arcade 1-up setups come in a pretty small box for how big an arcade setup actually is, or how big an arcade system seems like it's going to be. So it comes in this little box. It's relatively heavy, and you rip it open, and you'll see that all of the pieces are very, very tightly packed into there. They're not wasting any space in these boxes at all. It came with just a couple of pieces, though. I was surprised at how quickly I was able to put it together. Modding them, however, is a completely different story. Building the actual cabinets, like for the NBA Jam one, I think it took me about 2 hours on my own, putting it together, going step by step, including putting together the riser, which takes maybe another 10, 15 minutes. For most of it, you just want to use a screwdriver. It's relatively simple. I would say that it's easier than building most furniture that you would buy at the store. If you bought things at IKEA, they're generally more difficult than these. The electronics that you have to hook up in these things are extremely simple. You're just plugging things in. You're plugging in 3, maybe 4 little plugs that only go into one spot, and it's really hard to screw that up. I mean, I guess theoretically you could screw it up, but I don't know how. You would have to really jam it in there and try to break things. It's pretty simple to set up, though, and relatively easy to build. I'd recommend having a second person around just to make it a little bit easier, but you could definitely do it on your own if you're capable of building anything at all. Even my wife, who hates building stuff, mentioned that this seemed insanely easy. She was recording me, watching me do this one, and said, "Wow, that's pretty amazing how easy it just kind of comes together and becomes an arcade out of these couple little pieces and a few screws." You really just need like a screwdriver. Although if you're doing the riser, I would recommend grabbing a drill too. Just be careful. It's a lot of work twisting those things in, unless you got some big arms or something. I don't know. For me though, the drill helped a bit. So what about the modding process? What's that like? I'm going to do a full video going deep into modding, but I want to talk a little bit about it first. Before we do that though, if you haven't already commented below or hit the like button, make sure that you do it so that I know that doing a video on the full modding is definitely something people want to see. And with the full mod setup, you're able to play basically whatever you want. The way it works is you'll swap stuff out and make it so that the screen works essentially like an HDMI setup. You just plug in a monitor or an HDMI cable just like you would to a monitor, and then the controls can work through USB. You got to do a bit of work to rewire them and put that all together, and I'll show you how to do that in the next video again if people are interested. But it's not too difficult, and once you're done with that, you can really just run anything. You can run a Raspberry Pi, set it up modded to play any number of games, go download games, download ROMs, whatever it is that you want to do. Or you could just run your own Linux build, or what I prefer to do now is just run Windows. I run Windows and run Unity on there so that I can play just about any game, and I can go grab my Steam library, play things from there as well. Now, most games don't work very well on my NBA Jam cabinet, and this is the whole reason that I did this video and the reason I'm swapping the cabinet out. The problem that I ran into, the biggest issue with the NBA Jam cabinet and using it for my own game development, is the buttons. It's a really great cabinet, but it's got 3 buttons. And almost no game works with 3 buttons. If you think about it, when you're playing like a mouse and keyboard game, you've got 3 buttons on your mouse alone, let alone any other hotkeys that you're hitting. And if you got a gamepad, well, you know how many buttons are on those things. They're just loaded up now with triggers, buttons everywhere. So everything that I wanted to play just wasn't very playable, at least not without using 2 players' controls, and that's no fun at all. So I wanted to get something that just had a few more buttons and maybe a different theme of another game that I used to play a ton of, which was Street Fighter. So this is the one that I'm going with, and I'm going to mod it up. If you want to see the full video on that again, make sure that you've liked, subscribed, and all that stuff. Also, don't forget to check out Core. Get started easily building and sharing games by simply clicking the link in the description below.